to a good start. Welcome everyone to Managing the Jingle 2020. Really want to thank you for showing up this morning, recognizing that it's early, it's snowy, and you quite possibly could be looking at your to-do list and reviewing all the things you need to get done before you leave today. So again, really grateful that you joined us, hoping that when we finish today, you're going to be grateful too that you took this hour to spend with us. Also, with that being said, I really want to acknowledge that we spend a large portion of our day giving to others, whether that's giving to our patients' families, our coworkers, our own families, significant others, and even our pets. It's not uncommon for our needs to be pushed to the bottom of our to-do list. And I don't know about you, but I don't always get to the bottom of my to-do list. So we're going to invite you today to give yourself the gift of time with as few distractions and interruptions as possible. So if you can, just allow yourself to maybe put your email aside, recognize that that chart message will still be there, and put your phone aside for just the next hour. I don't know about you, but I can only imagine the toll that this year has taken on many of our bodies, minds, and our souls. What we're hoping for today is that we can take a little time to learn and possibly relearn strategies to help combat some of the stress we've endured and we continue to endure. Also, we're hoping that we can engage in some mindful practices that will work to help nourish our minds and bodies. And you maybe have noticed this by now, but you are all on mute. That's just due to the number of people on the call. But Amy and I want this to be as interactive as possible. So definitely feel free, if you have questions, if you have comments, put it in the chat box and On will receive those. And then you might notice also throughout our time together today, we're going to be asking some questions and asking for you to maybe share some of your experiences. So feel free, if you're comfortable, we'd love for you to participate. And then finally, if you do experience an interruption during our time together, just remember you're on video. So if you could turn your video off while you attend to whatever's going on, and then absolutely feel free to turn your video back on and join us. So let's get started. Or maybe not. Let's try to get started. There we go. So if you are comfortable, I'm going to ask for you to close your eyes. If not, feel free to just turn your gaze straight in front of you. And I'm going to invite you to take the next 30 seconds to visualize one of your favorite holiday moments or experiences. And as you're thinking about it, I want you to think about, where were you? Who was with you? What were you doing? Maybe how were you feeling? Maybe even think about, can you recall any of the smells or the tastes that you associate with this favorite holiday moment? Take just a few more seconds to think about it. And for those who closed your eyes, I'll invite you to open them as we move to the slide. And I recognize that this is an assumption, but I'm wondering if some of these experiences, emotions, or images came up for you while you were visualizing one of your favorite holiday moments. Things like maybe travel, family time, meals together. Maybe just to, when we think about our favorite time, an overall feeling of contentment and happiness. So I'm going to ask you one more time, if you're comfortable, or I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and take about another 30 seconds to visualize what has happened for you in 2020. And as you do this, again, maybe thinking about, where have you been? Who's been with you? What have you experienced? How have you felt in 2020? And again, can you maybe even recall tastes or smell that remind you of moments that you've experienced in 2020? Take a few more seconds to think about this. I'll invite you to open up your eyes again. Again, recognizing that this is an assumption, but wondering if any of these images or experiences came up for you when you were thinking about 2020 so far. Things like the election, economic unrest, social unrest, welcoming a new life into a world with COVID, fires, weddings postponed, virtual learning, and quite possibly maybe just an overall feeling of just heaviness, uncertainty, and quite possibly loss.
We want to move into discussing today some of our whys. It is our hope that as we look deeper into some of these whys, you will gain tools that can assist you to continue the forward motion as an RMCC team member, doing what we do. We also hope that you will gain some takeaways for your personal life that will allow you to get through what has already proven to be a very challenging year. So why is there such intensity for some right now? It seems that the holidays are always including a lot of heightened stress and emotions that run rampant. But I think it's safe to say that when looking back at this year, 2020 has been more difficult and unsettling than others. As a whole, we have witnessed a rise in anxiety, depression, uncertainty, and an overall increase in the intensity of our stress and emotions. Many of us can list hardships we have faced in this past year, but we struggle with fully understanding why we are experiencing such heightened emotions and responses to the many things that are happening around us. Let's begin by taking a look at some of the reasons we might be feeling more intensely. Ambiguous loss. I'm going to discuss this more in depth in another slide, but this is a loss that cannot be seen. Ambiguous loss for one person may not be a loss for another. This type of loss is common and has impacted others in many ways this year. Any of us who are on social media have done this at one time or another, the comparison game. We look at others' lives, or at least the parts that they choose to post, and can end up feeling inadequate or like a failure. The trouble with comparison is we typically only see a part of people's stories and then begin to form beliefs and judgments about ourselves. We might find ourselves comparing more this year than in the past, especially since increased screen time is on the rise because of the self-isolation. I think one of the reasons we do this could be our own discomfort in holding and addressing some of the most difficult emotions and feelings we are experiencing. So we look to others to compare how they're handling things and how they're doing this in their own lives. This is not all bad, but it becomes harmful when we go into spending a great deal of time and energy questioning ourselves in a way that resembles some of the following statements. Why is Nicole spending so much time cooking with her kids when I want to hide in the closet? Why do their family pictures look happier than mine? And how are they all matching? How are they smiling and breezing through life when getting out of bed is such a chore for me? So as you can see, the game of comparison can lead us down a path of shameful thinking, guilt, and overall increase in suffering. Expectations can many times be the thief of joy. We live in a culture where we place or have expectations on how things should look like, feel like, what is good versus what is bad. When our expectations are not met, this can create an environment where we are blinded by disappointment, guilt, and shame. So much so that it can completely block us from the feeling of the joyful moment that are happening right in front of us, and then impede our ability to cultivate joy into our own lives. Expending energy trying to avoid or ignore difficult thoughts and emotions. Another reason why we might be feeling more intensity in our emotions and feelings this year is our desire as humans to fix, to avoid, or get rid of some of the difficult thoughts and emotions and sensations we may be experiencing. Again, this is very normal. I don't know about you, but growing up, I was not necessarily taught to notice the discomfort. I think I heard more statements along the lines of, just keep moving forward. Things will get better. Don't focus on the negative. Only think of the positive. It will all be okay. It is not always easy to notice discomfort in our bodies or witness someone experiencing this type of discomfort. What is tricky about this is when we turn to avoiding, fixing, or ridding ourselves from our difficult thoughts and emotions, we expend more energy doing this than the energy we would expend noticing those emotions without allowing them to take over. Our difficult thoughts and emotions will always be there. We might be able to push them away for a short period of time, but I assure you, they will reappear. They always do. As we move through our material for today, we will provide some strategies you can access at any time to help notice your difficult emotions, thoughts, and sensations without allowing them to define you, and hopefully leaving you with more energy than the energy that is left when we battle with our own thoughts and emotions. And finally, we know that our minds tend to like spending time in the past or the future, which keeps us from being fully present in the here and now. This can increase our anxiety because we're reminded of what things might have looked like in the past. Maybe we fall into the pattern of reviewing our regrets. When we spend too much time in the past or the future, we can experience anxiety and worry about what lies ahead, which is many times somewhat out of our control, which can lead to creating suffering we do not need. Take a minute. I want you to think about our year and some of the grief you may have experienced as you were forced into a new way of living. Ambiguous loss can be described as grief from what life used to look like. Ambiguous loss can make us feel like a grief in limbo, no beginning, no end. We struggle to know how long these losses will last and are typically accompanied by a great deal of uncertainty.
So as you just heard Amy say, that with ambiguous loss, it's something that many of us have experienced throughout this past year, and then also has a lot of uncertainty. And what I know about humans is that when we are confronted with a lot of uncertainty, we try to control the uncontrollable. And that leads us to wanting to make plans. And oftentimes we make what we call plan A's, and those are the plans on how we want to feel or how we want things to go. And sometimes we only make room for those plan A's because that's what gives us certainty in the uncertain. So I'm gonna touch on plan B, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit later today, but then plan B is the one, again, that we sometimes can struggle to make room for. And plan B can be described as how I'm really feeling or what's really going on. So for a minute though, let's take a look. Let's go back to the plan A and take a look at what can happen when we get really rigid in our thinking and really don't want to budge from our plan A's and resist even thinking that there could be another plan. So just take a moment. You can look at some of these images. So when it's either plan A or plan A, I'm not going to budge. When I was taking a look at these, I smiled a little bit because I think they're kind of funny, but at the same time, I think there's quite a bit of truth in them. That sometimes when we only allow ourselves to have one plan, and that's how we want to feel and how we want things to look, we can become completely exhausted. Maybe look like this man on the right who he wants people to think he's happy, or he maybe wants to feel that happiness, so he put clothespins on his cheeks to portray that. The woman up top makes me really smile because it looks like maybe she's had a run-in with her oven or stove, quite possibly has a burn. Come hell or high water, she's going to serve that holiday meal no matter what it takes. Okay.
Rigid thinking can lead to poor impulse control and behaviors that leave us feeling more and more depleted, guilty, and shameful. After you take a minute to view this slide, I invite you to think about how many of your plan A's this year, which remember is how you wanted things to look or feel, need to shift, or were possibly forced into a plan B, which is how you really feel and how things are really happening. Would any of you be willing to share how you've had to implement plan B this year? If so, if you could please put those in the chat box. We'll take a few seconds and see if we get any good examples. While Ann is taking those, I'm gonna finish by saying some days it's easier to find grace in the shifting from plan A to plan B, but not always. But we are doing hard things and we are still showing up to our lives as evidenced by you all being here today, right? Join Lindsay and I as we work on practicing more of a willingness with our plan Bs instead of pushing so hard against them that we have no energy left for ourselves, those around us, and certainly no energy in the possibility of joy.
I'll move forward. Do you agree, Amy, or did you want to wait another minute?
I think we're good.
Let's move forward. Okay. So, like Amy said, let's start talking about our plan Bs. And I think plan Bs, we can start moving into them once we kind of start looking at the word acceptance. Acceptance is a big word. And I want you to know in no way am I insinuating with the word acceptance here that you have to be happy with your plan B, or you have to approve of your plan B, or be even excited for your plan B. More what I'm saying with the word acceptance here is, again, kind of going back to, can we make space for a plan B and not resist it? Kind of end the struggle with, we're only going to have a plan A and we're not allowing a plan B. We're not even going to think about it. So being more of making room. One of the ways we can do that is recognizing that difficult circumstances in our lives happen. It's inevitable. And I know when I speak from my desk here that everyone has experienced probably very difficult circumstances in their life. And oftentimes with those difficult circumstances, We also might experience difficult thoughts and emotions. And I really want you to take a look, or I want you to listen to that word experience, because we can experience these difficult thoughts and emotions, but they don't need to define us. How many of you have said to a patient, you're experiencing your cancer, but it doesn't need to define you? Our difficult thoughts and emotions can be somewhat similar. We can experience them, but they don't need to take over. The other thing with getting a little bit closer to acceptance is recognizing that our difficult thoughts and emotions are temporary. They're not going to be there forever. And with that, with them not being there forever, it's going to open up more space for maybe to experience other thoughts and emotions, and maybe even access that joy that we all deserve. So I want to pose another question to you. How many of us witness our patients and families experience probably one of the most difficult circumstances of their lives, which is cancer? But yet, in the most difficult of circumstances, they're still able to experience joy, see joy, and quite possibly cultivate joy. I would dare to say that we see this almost daily, and that our patients and families model this for us, that it is possible. As humans, we can do this. We can be in really difficult circumstances. We can have really difficult thoughts and emotions, yet we can open ourselves up to experiencing joy. So I'm going to walk you through a little mindfulness practice, and I hope you will decide to join me. If you're comfortable, you can close your eyes again. And this mindfulness practice actually came from acceptance and commitment therapy, which can be a really great way to cope with some of the difficult emotions and thoughts that we have. So again, I'm going to ask you, if you would, to close your eyes. And while you do that, I'm going to ask you to imagine that you are the sky. The weather that passes through the sky, which is you, are our thoughts, our feelings, and our sensations. We are all aware that some weather that passes through the sky can be very harsh and oftentimes uncomfortable. We also know that the weather can change, and sometimes changes very frequently throughout the day. But one thing we know about weather is that it doesn't last forever. It moves in and it moves out, just like our thoughts, our emotions, and some of our sensations. And as for the sky, we make room for that weather. We allow the weather to come and go, knowing that it's only temporary. The one thing we can say about the sky is that it can experience the harshest of weather and still stay intact without being destroyed. So if you did close your eyes, you can open them back up. And this is a mindfulness practice that you can use throughout your day, and you can access it fairly quickly, about visualizing you as the sky and some of the difficult emotions as the weather, and that they won't be there forever, but to let them kind of move through so that it opens us up to even experiencing maybe joy even later on throughout our day.
With acceptance, we can begin to embrace a plan B, or have a willingness to make room for plan B when plan A is not possible. I want you to ask yourself, What do I give myself permission to do, think, or say today? What is in my control and what isn't? How do I welcome curiosity rather than judgment? So we are going to give you a permission slip. And we want to know, what are you going to give yourself permission to do today? Maybe it's permission to experience our difficult emotions and thoughts that are many times inevitable during difficult experiences. Permission to feel versus avoid. Permission to also feel without allowing the thoughts and the emotions to define us, like Lindsay has talked about earlier. Permission to allow ourselves the grace we often give to others, but not ourselves. I'm going to say that again. Permission to allow ourselves the grace we often give to others, but not ourselves. I invite you to write something in the chat that you would like to give yourself permission to do, think, or feel in the upcoming weeks.
Permission to maintain and not overdo it. Permission to let things be what they will be. Permission to make mistakes. Permission to play in the snow and make snow angels with my kid and not worry about housework. Permission to not have all of the answers or physical energy to accomplish what I want to do each day. Permission to not strive for perfection.
On the next slide, when we begin to feel overwhelmed by our thoughts, our emotions, and overall circumstances, can we take a moment to look at what is in our control and what is not? In my years as a social worker and frankly as a human being, I witnessed myself and others spending a great deal of their energy ruminating and trying to strategize around circumstances that are out of their control, when the energy could be directed towards some things that are in our control. For instance, we can control our attitude. We can control our influence over our work environment, meaning we can show up, we can treat others with respect and kindness, we can assume best intentions, but we cannot control how others will respond or show up to work. We can control how we embrace a plan B in a global pandemic, but we cannot necessarily control if schools close, if there is a citywide shutdown, and how others respond to the current circumstances.
So how do we welcome curiosity rather than judgment? And I just want to bring you back for a moment to that sky and weather metaphor, about how we talked about some of those difficult emotions, thoughts, and sensations can be referred to as the weather and how it moves through, but it doesn't need to stay forever. That sometimes can be a way to look and not evaluate your difficult thoughts and emotions and thoughts. So what I mean by evaluate can even kind of go back to that permission slip where some of you said, I'm just going to pull a few out, like not strive for perfection, maintain, maybe not have all the answers, play with my child in the snow, and not think about the house or not worry about the housework getting done. Some of that, you see how we were so quick to evaluate, like I should be doing my housework. I should know all the answers. I should be achieving all this in my day. Sometimes to just recognize that those thoughts and those difficult stories and emotions we tell ourselves, they're there, but they're going to move through. And the more that we can kind of just recognize and try not to evaluate them, the more space we're going to give them to move so they don't get stuck in us and so that we don't get stuck in that kind of spiral way of thinking. So that kind of gives you a sense of how can we look at some of those with curiosity versus judging them. I'm a good, I'm a bad person. I should do this, I shouldn't do this, okay? I'm gonna ask you to join me one more time. I recognize I have been asking you to join me quite a bit in the past hour, so thank you for being a good sport. But for this time, I'm hoping that this can be something that might rejuvenate you for the day. I'm gonna walk you through a body scan, wondering if maybe some of you have participated in a body scan before, but what this really allows us to do is to kind of drop into our bodies. Again, it kind of goes to curiosity versus judgment. So kind of recognize what you might be feeling, sensations, thoughts, and being able to just look at them, notice them without that judgment and just kind of keep moving through. So I'll walk you through that and hoping this will be a really positive experience. I will invite you to close your eyes if you're comfortable with that, because sometimes that can just help us to focus a little bit more. Also, if you are uncomfortable with having your video on, I don't know if anyone really does have their video on, but if you do and you want to turn your video off, please feel free to do that. And then when I invite you back into our space today, you can turn it back on. So we'll get started. Begin by making yourself comfortable. Sit in a chair and allow your back to be straight, but not stiff, with your feet on the ground. Your hands can be resting gently on your lap or at your side. If you haven't already, allow your eyes to close or to remain open with a soft gaze. Take several long, slow, deep breaths. Breathing in fully and exhaling slowly. Breathe in through your nose and out through your nose or mouth. Feel your stomach expand on the inhale and relax and let go as you exhale. Begin to let go of the noises around you. Begin to shift your attention from outside to inside yourself. If you are distracted by sounds in the room, you can simply just notice this and then bring your focus back to your breathing. Now slowly bring your attention down to your feet. Begin observing sensations in your feet. You might want to wiggle your toes a little. feeling your toes against your socks or your shoes. Just notice without the judgment. You might even imagine sending your breath down to your feet, as if the breath is traveling through the nose, to the lungs, and through the abdomen, all the way down to your feet. And then back up again, out through your nose and lungs. Perhaps you don't feel anything at all. That is absolutely fine too. Just allow yourself to feel the sensation of maybe not feeling anything. When you are ready, allow your feet to dissolve in your mind's eye and move your attention up to your ankles, your calves, your knees, and your thighs. Observe the sensations you are experiencing throughout your legs. Breathe into and breathe out of the legs. If your mind begins to wander during this exercise, just gently notice this without judgment and bring your mind back to noticing the sensations in your legs. If you notice any discomfort, any pain, or maybe any stiffness, I invite you to just not judge this. Just simply notice it. Observe how all sensations rise and fall. They shift and change moment to moment. Notice how no sensation is permanent. Just observe and allow the sensations to be in the moment, just as they are. Breathe into and out from your legs. Then, on the next out breath, allow the legs to dissolve in your mind and move to the sensations in your lower back and your pelvis, softening and releasing as you breathe in and out. Slowly move your attention up to your mid back and your upper back. Become curious about the sensations here. You may become aware of sensations in the muscle, maybe even temperature or points of contact with your furniture. And with each out breath, you may let go of tension you are carrying. And then very gently shift your focus to your stomach and all the internal organs here. Perhaps you notice the feeling of clothing, maybe even the process of digestion, or the belly rising or falling with each breath. If you notice opinions arising about these areas, just gently let them go and just return back to noticing sensations. And as you continue to breathe, bring your awareness to the chest and the heart region. And just notice your heartbeat. Observe how the chest rises during the inhale and how the chest falls during the exhale. Let go of any judgments that may arise. The next out breath, shift the focus to your hands and your fingertips. See if you can channel your breathing into and out of this area as if you're breathing into and out from your hands. If your mind wanders, just gently bring it back to the sensations in your hands. And then on the next out breath, shift the focus and bring your awareness up into your arms. Observe the sensations, or maybe even the lack of sensations that might be occurring there. You might even notice a difference between your left arm and your right arm. Just notice. There's no need to judge this. And as you exhale, you may experience the arms soften and release tensions. Continue to breathe, and now shift your focus to your neck, your shoulder, and your throat region. This is an area that we often hold tension. Be with the sensations here. You may notice your shoulders moving along with the breath. See if you can let go of any thoughts or stories you're telling yourself about this area. And as you breathe, you may begin to feel the tension rolling off your shoulders. And on the next out breath, shift your focus and direct your attention to your head and your face. Observe all the sensations occurring there. Notice the movement of the air as you breathe into and out of your nose or mouth. As you exhale, you might notice the softening of any tension you may be holding. And now, let your attention expand out to include your entire body as a whole. Bring into your awareness the top of your head down to the bottom of your toes. Can you allow yourself to just feel the gentle rhythm of your breath as it moves through your entire body. And as we come to the end of this practice, take a full, deep breath, taking in all the energy of this practice, and exhale fully. And when you are ready, I'll invite you to open your eyes and return your attention to the present moment. So thank you all for joining me in that.
As you prepare for the holidays, remember, embrace your plan B, give yourself permission, recognize where you have control, and welcome curiosity. But most importantly, remember this. We can experience difficult circumstances and still cultivate hope and joy in our lives.
And it wouldn't be Amy and me to not leave this presentation without offering just a little bit of maybe humor and a smile. And I really want to acknowledge that this has been a tough year, not only for what's going on in our world, but then also the work that each of you do each and every day. But what I also know is that sometimes just a smile or a simple laugh can really change the course of a day or even just the course of a minute. So Amy and I came up with these tunes that maybe can help you manage some of the discomfort that you might feel with the approaching holidays and just even with the year. So I'll walk you through them. Feel free to laugh. This is the perfect venue or Zoom that you can actually laugh at me, but I'm just going to pretend you're laughing with me, okay? So do you hear what I hear versus run, run, Rudolph? It's okay to hear the uncomfortable thoughts and emotions. The more you run, the more tired you get. Silent night versus jingle bells. Let those thoughts move through you. The bells are like our thoughts and emotions. They're gonna keep ringing, but they don't have to stay forever. There is hope for a silent night. Rocking around the Christmas tree versus grandma got ran over by a reindeer. Can we dance with our thoughts and just allow them to move through us with less impact? Versus allowing those thoughts and emotions to run us over, like grandma and the reindeer. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. Our thoughts are gonna keep coming. Sorry, I'm gonna get out of this because I can't read it exactly. Hold on one second. Our thoughts and emotions will keep coming because we are human. Just like snow, like today, this is perfect timing. Our thoughts and emotions, they're not gonna last forever. Let's conserve our energy and just decrease our struggle with them. Maybe making room for a little bit of laughter and joy. So we did want to offer you some resources. I won't go through all of them, but these can be really good apps or just online resources that can also walk you through some mindfulness practices. The first one, though, I really want to point out is the Employee Assistance Program. A really good resource, one that I think sometimes people are hesitant to reach out to or have judgment with ourselves about reaching out to. It's there for a reason, and can be extremely helpful, especially during this time of year. And then that brings us to an end. Thank you all. Again, I hope you're thanking yourself for taking this past hour to hopefully rejuvenate and give you the time and space to nourish your bodies.